In the video today, we're going to continue to look at the federal building in Port Huron. And the last video, we looked at some of the background, especially the land that it was built on, and of course the architect. This site here on Water Street was finally selected as the site to build on. It wasn't very popular with a lot of the citizens because they felt it should have been built on Military Street or Huron Avenue, but it turned out to be a very centralized place, and like we said in the last video, it had to be surrounded by 3 different streets, and that limited it to a lot of the areas on Military and Huron Avenue. The building and the land was not supposed to exceed $200,000. The first appropriation toward the work, $100,000, was made March 3, 1873. Subsequent appropriations were $75,000 June 24, 1874, $25,000 March 3, 1875, and $36,000 for completion of the building and furnishing the same July 31, 1876. Now, I'm no math wizard, but if you add all those up, that comes to $236,000, so I do believe they went over their budget. The work of excavation was begun in August 1873. In the book, The History of St. Clair County, it says this: work was pushed rapidly forward, and the cornerstone laid October the 8th, 1874, with imposing ceremonies. The occasion will be remembered. The Flint Blues, with the Gardener's famous band, Detroit Knights of Pythias, officers of the Grand Lodge of Michigan, Knights Templar, various Masonic lodges and other home societies, and a large concourse of people participated. Fortunately, we have a couple photographs of that ceremony, the one you're looking at here. And if you look closely, you can see the band on the platform playing. At this point in time, only the basement was completed, and of course the drainage and sewers for the building as well, because that ran under the basement. The book says this about that: water from the roof is conducted through cast iron pipes in the wall into 2 stone drain pipes underneath the basement floor, extending the full length of the building with lateral branches. These pipes are provided with stench traps that prevent gas accumulating in the sewer from coming up in any part of the building, and empty into a 15-inch stone pipe leading to Black River. In case anyone should have this newspaper picture in their scrapbook, there should be a correction made to the caption. The caption here says that it was taken in October 1872, and it should be October 1874. This photograph was taken looking to the southwest, and the reason we know that is because if we look on the upper left-hand side, you can see this steeple of a church that's designated by the red arrow. You can see the sight line from the custom house to the church, and this is a map from 1894, and it distinguishes the church as the St. John's German Evangelical Church. Today, with this satellite view, the sight line looks like this. Today, the church on that corner looks like this, and now it's called the St. John's United Church of Christ. In this map from 1867, you can see St. John's Church a little clearer, and the yellow rectangle designates where the custom house will be built in the future. And if you look right across the street from that yellow rectangle on 6th Street, you'll see that there's another church, and that's the Methodist Church. I know, you say, well, the Methodist Church is on Lapeer Avenue. Well, back then, it wasn't. It was on 6th Street. And in this photograph here of that ceremony, it's looking directly west, and you can see the Methodist Church. The main speaker of the celebration of laying the cornerstone that day was Omar Conger. The book has this to say about Mr. Conger. The oration was delivered by Honorable O.D. Conger, to whom, as much as any other person, the erection of the building is due, and in it were included some statistics concerning the business of the district, which were probably new to most of his hearers, and which we cannot do better than to reproduce here for the purpose of showing the importance of the business interests of this district, for the accommodation of which this new building has been erected. This book contains a complete speech that Mr. Conger gave that day, and I won't bore you by reading all of it, but I will read the first paragraph. We have met, fellow citizens, to assist in the ceremonies of laying the cornerstone of a beautiful edifice designed to promote and foster the commerce and navigation of our country, facilitate the reception and distribution of letters and literature, provide for the administration of justice, and subserve the necessities of the people. In this building here, you can see it's well on its way to being built. The outside walls are already up. The building took about 4 years to complete and was finished in 1877. It's not an overly ornate building, such as some the architect has designed, but it certainly has some prominent features. The most prominent feature, I believe, is the octagonal cupola at the top of the building. There are cupolas and there are cupolas, but I think this is a very unique cupola. For those of you that didn't quite make it all the way through geometry, octagonal would mean that it has 8 sides. Let me read a description of this cupola. But let's use a more recent photo. You'll see it a little clearer. The top of the cupola is pierced by oval windows, one in every other section. So there'd be 4 windows in the top. And let's zoom in on this a little bit to see the detail on it. The building is topped by an octagonal cupola pierced by windows, flanked by engaged pilasters and topped with bracketed pediments. I don't know about you, but I didn't know what any of that meant, so I looked them all up. And come to find out, I'm a little smarter now, architecturally anyway. The description for a pilaster is called a shallow rectangular feature projecting from a wall having a capital and base and usually imitating the form of a column. So the pilasters would be those 4 vertical things that sit between the windows that appear to look like columns. Bracketed pediments, well, I think we all know what brackets are. The pediment had me a little bit stumped, but I found out it's a low gable, typically triangular with a horizontal cornice and raking cornices. And you can see 2 of these above the right and the left window. And those little small rectangular blocks that are closely spaced, those are called dentil. Not like the dentist, dental, D-E-N-T-I-L. I'm throwing that in for no charge. As you can see, there's more to this cupola than you could see from the street level. More than I could see anyway. Most postcards you see don't show any of the roof, mainly because they're taken from the street level. But this one does, and you can see it's, of course, painted in by the artist green, which was accurate, of course. Most of us growing up in Port Huron remember the green roof of the post office. You'll have to excuse me because in doing this video on this particular building, I quite often refer to it as the post office because it was, the custom house because it was, and of course the federal building because it is. So bear with me. Anyway, I said all that to say this. Mr. Conger, in his address at the cornerstone laying, said this: "The roof, undoubtedly the best in this state, is of heavy sheet copper, which was purchased in New York and cost 30 cents per pound, or with the labor of placing it in position, $6,300. And we all know that it doesn't take long for copper to become green in color. We also know that that sum was quite a bit of money back then. Today, when you look at the federal building, you can see the main entrance there in the center of the building. But originally, there were 3 entrances with the corresponding steps that went with them. And you can see by these red arrows where those entrances were. They've since been replaced by windows. In this photograph here, you can see all 3 entrances. The one on the left where the 2 little girls are standing, and then the one in the center is just to the right of that lady with the hat on. And of course, the one on the right is quite easy to see. When you went up those steps and entered the entrance, you walked into a 12-foot corridor or lobby. And beyond that, of course, the post office. The first floor is basically dedicated to the post office. Also, as you walked into the lobby, you would notice two large gas chandeliers. When you came up to the post office to do your business, there was a wall that separated where the customers did their business with the post office and separated them from the actual working room or where the mail was sorted and everything on the other side of that wall. This photograph is the working side of the wall where they sorted the mail. But you can see the wall that I was talking about. You can see all that glass in that wall, and you can't really see the bottom part too well, but that's where the customers did their business and the postal employees took care of them. Omar Conger said this in his speech at the time of the setting of the cornerstone. The wall framework is of a walnut and butternut with oil finish. In it are the drawers and boxes to the height that a man can conveniently reach, and above that, glass reaching to the ceiling. 2/3 of the space designed for that purpose is now occupied by the drawers and boxes, of which there are 24 drawers, 16 newspaper boxes, and 1,250 lock boxes. The boxes are metal frame fronts with small glass in each behind the frame, through which the box owner can see whether mail is in the box without unlocking. The locks are manufactured by the Johnson Rotary Lock Company of New York and are very similar to the Yale lock. On a side note, I think it's interesting that Yale Lock Company ended up suing the Johnson Rotary Lock Company because of infringement on their patent, or so they claimed. They sued the Johnson Company. They also sued 70 of the postmasters around the country for using those locks. The result of the trial was a decree in favor of the defendant, dismissing the bill on the ground of non-infringement. And looking at this photograph, I think it's quite unique that this lock used letters rather than numbers. The floor in this room had alternating black walnut and ash wood. It also had 8 iron columns, 14 inches in diameter, to support the upper floors, and you can see these columns in this photograph here. This room had 2 general delivery cases, 2 assorting tables, 1 stamping or canceling table, and 1 for distribution, sometimes called a throwing table, 1 mailing case, 1 case for advertised letters, transient newspapers, etc., and 3 standing desks. And in this photograph here, we can see the gentleman took a break from his work to have his picture taken. And we happen to know this gentleman's name. That's because this photograph was in the paper. And the gentleman's name was George W. Hartson. This picture was taken much later, but I like this picture for a couple different reasons. One, it gives you a good look at this iron column that we were talking about earlier. The other reason I like this picture is because it gives you a look on both sides of the wall. You can see the employees on this side, and if you look over here, you see a customer peeking through the hole there to see what was going on. I want to take one more look at this photograph here, because I want you to look at this wall one more time, get into your mind what it looked like back then, because the next couple pictures I want to show you relate to that. The original postal lobby, one stretching the length of the building along the north facade, was completely removed by 1959 to 1960 renovation work, but was restored in 2008 under the First Impressions Initiative of the U.S. General Service Administration, or the GSA. The initiative uses historic buildings out of these funds to reclaim the architectural integrity of altered entrances and lobbies. Utilizing historic photos, some which you've seen here, GSA recreated the original lobby volume, architectural details, and ornamentation, reestablishing the building as a community landmark. This is looking from the opposite direction, and you can see they've done a beautiful job with the wood, and I'm sure it looked very similar to what it did back then. If you notice on your right-hand side, there's a rather large opening that goes into another part of the building. And in this picture here, you can see it a little better. You can see what's actually what's inside that opening. And that took you to the postmaster's office as well as other offices located in the building. In 1959 to 1960, the post office vacated the building, and at a cost of $250,000, the first floor was renovated to house the Social Security Administration. It then moved to Military Street and was located in this building here. And with this move came a new name. It became the Port Huron Federal Building. In 1974, the Custom House won a place on the National Register of Historic Places. And it certainly is an historic place. To some, an Indian burial ground. To others, the Custom House. To others, the Post Office. And to yet others, the Federal Building. I think I'll always remember it as the Post Office. Well, folks, we're not done yet. We still want to look at what was on the second and third floor. And we also want to look at this fountain, Mag and Mamie, and the controversy that surrounded it. So join me then in our next video.